Well, good day, everybody. You've joined us once again at Cyberhuman Frontiers. It's Saturday, February 20th, 2021. And we are, if you're brave enough to come with us, we are going to probe yet further into the world of artificial intelligence. Specifically, we're going to look at some patents, and we're going to start off with a couple little videos, it's all around the subject of how in our world and in our society there is ever so subtle more of a normalization of artificial intelligence into our world, our devices, our interactions, and even to the point of beginning to help to quantify, translate, and transmit our emotional state. And of course, that's quite valuable if you're in a position where you want to monitor or help to broker the interaction between subject A and subject B, for example, that you can get a reading on things other than merely just the words that people say. This is all happening and going to be done more and more, facilitated by ever so much more powerful artificial intelligence. A question that I came up with that kind of piqued the interests of me and TMC was the ethics of it. It begets the question, should artificial intelligence actually manage human interaction? And I think about it. TMC, by the way, how are you tonight?
Good. A little windy where I'm at, but other than that, everything's great.
Okay. So I'll just start us off a little bit here. Imagine, if you will, a world in which all possible communications between humans becomes something that is transmitted, translated, and monitored by artificial intelligence. In a future such as that, artificial intelligence it's going to be in a position, maybe a good one, maybe not, we don't know, because anytime that there's artificial intelligence, there's a certain element of virtuality that is injected into the relationships, right? So there's now a middleman that'll be in there. If things go the way they look like they're going, then artificial intelligence is set to redefine relationships of all sorts at all the way up at the international level, at corporate level, at the level of social diplomacy, international diplomacy, corporate relations between parties, and I guess you could say that this would be for the purpose of averting any and all possible misunderstandings or conflicts between them, and that could span all the way from the family unit to the ruling of nations. What do I mean by this? I mean that if subject A and subject B are communicating, or group A and group B are communicating, that by way of that interface system, it would be able to know the entire perspective of party A versus party B. And if there were a way to modify those communications in such a way as to avoid, let's say, avoiding the transmission of saying something that shouldn't be said, and to help to emphasize areas of common interest, then it would facilitate smoother coexistence at so many levels, all the way from the large to the small. So think of augmentation of human interaction. This is a way of augmenting our communications. Do we need it? Should we have it? And there are numerous examples in history where communication breakdowns have occurred between humans and between groups, and it's resulted in things all the way from the waging of wars to domestic conflict, divorce, et cetera, et cetera. And then Another thing that I want to touch on, it's just kind of, it's interesting, it's powerful, it's amusing, at least the phrase is amusing. Have you ever heard of voice of God technology? So these are some of the areas that we're going to be getting into. Don't forget, for further reference and for more good reading, as well as some videos, check out humaninternet.org. https://humaninternet.org. That's TMC's repository of information on all the subjects, pretty much all the subjects that we talk about on this show. And let's see what else we got here. Well, before we go too much further, let's just get our little community guidelines disclaimer out of the way. The points of view and purpose of the video here and others is not to incite fear, violence, or harass or bully in any way, but to help to facilitate the sharing of opinions and thoughts with other like-minded individuals curious about the same subject. This encourages conversation and awareness, and it helps heighten our overall consciousness about some of these subjects. And I think that it's just so much more powerful when 1,000 people are thinking about something versus just one. And so that's what we're hoping to accomplish here, is to get some of these subjects out there so that people can think about them. The opinions expressed on this stream belong solely to the persons espousing them and are not a representation of the channel Cyberhuman Frontiers. None of our videos claim to give medical, legal, political, or financial advice. This is, quote unquote, for entertainment purposes only. From time to time, this video and our channel may in general contain certain copyrighted works that were not specifically authorized to be used by the copyright holder, but which we believe in good faith are protected by federal law and the fair use doctrine for one or more of the reasons noted in the Copyright Act of 1976. All that is below the video. And without further ado, I'm going to get into just a little video. I just want to talk about something called the body area network. And once again, this is, something we're becoming familiar and normalized, if not somewhat fluent in some of these terms as we go forward. It's being developed at the level of industry and research labs as an outgrowth of some of the institutions that have big budgets to do it. And it is appearing in our devices, consumer level devices. So let me get this thing up here. We need to grab a drink of water pretty soon. My voice is failing me already. How am I going to make it here? Oh, TMC, you're going to have to take over on the talking. Excuse me. So there's a little video here. What is appearing in our devices? Hey, hold on. Consumer level devices. Hang on a second. So let me get this thing up here. Wow. I've got an echo. Grab a drink of water pretty soon. I'm going to stop that. I've got myself echoing at myself. So let me just find out where that's coming from. Not sure. I have many, many tabs open. And one of those tabs is talking. Not sure which one it is. I think I found it. Let's mute that one. Okay, let's try this again. Sorry about that. Okay. How are we now? Because that's the wrong one. But we have this, and we have this. And now let's see if it works. TMC just flagged me if the sound is too high or too low. So, a wireless body area network and the Internet of Things. Okay, brave new world, right?
I am Azad, and today I will be telling you about the wireless body area network and how it applies to the Internet of Things. First of all, let me give a brief definition of the wireless body area network. Wireless body area network is a short-range wireless network of wearable computing devices. Wireless body area network devices may be embedded inside the body as implants, may be surface-mounted on the body in a
inside the body as implants. I really like the happy background music and the very jolly and jovial avatar that's here. It's really nice stuff, you know. So anyway, integrated intra-body or a wearable, either one.
Fixed position, or maybe accompanied devices that humans can carry in different positions, such as in closed pockets, by hand, or in various bags. If we talk in the context of the Internet of Things, these implanted sensors and wearable devices
Try and zero in on this little diagram just a little bit if I can here. And for people that have been with us on the show as we've explored deeper and deeper and further, this is stuff that you've seen already. So we got an off-body link to a transmitting device, electromagnetic transmitting device, i.e. an internet router. We have, and the off-body link connects to the body area network, almost looks like a hub. And of course, that is now in communications by way of neurological transmissions to the brain or to skeletal muscles or elsewhere on the body, perhaps some of the organ systems. And so we can have an off-body link from subject A to the connection to the internet. Of course, AI is behind there somewhere too, know that. And then that can bounce communications by way of that one to another person's body area network controller. Now, it looks by way of this diagram that these two body area network controllers can actually talk to each other. So we have a body-to-body link, and then we have a more distant body, and we have off-body, and let's let him talk some more. And by the way, this is from... we want to thank this this creator in advance for allowing us to show what we're showing here. This is from Aware, rather small YouTube site, and it's a short description of a wireless body area network, just in case you didn't know. Here we go. Pretty cool stuff. Gets better and better.
are the things from the Internet of Things, whereas wireless body area network is the glue folding these implanted sensors and wearable devices together. The wireless body area networks can be described as an extension of wide area networks to personal space. The wireless body area networks can be further categorized as 1. In-body communications that occur between two or more devices inside.
Are you on mute, Mindy?
I muted myself. Thank you. So some of these phrases fly right by. And so this is from the interconnection by way of the extended wireless network to the intra-body space. Some of these phrases just, they let that sink in for a minute. To the on-body space. Let me say that one more time there.
1. In-body communications that occur between two or more devices inside a human body. This communication is mostly between implanted medical sensors. 2. On-body communications are happening within the networks and wearable systems in direct proximity of the human body. That means both wearables are located directly on or very.
So what I can see happening here is you've got your smartwatch or your whatever, you might have some sort of a Bluetooth wireless headset, or maybe even just something as innocuous as a headband that might have sensors inside of it, something that would normally look like just, a sweatband or a hat or something. And so connections between that and your internet connected and cellular connected smartphone, etc. And so I'm not quite sure which one of these would serve as the communications hub, but I'm guessing it just might be either it's something implanted in the human or it's the smartphone. The smartphone is amply capable of handling and steering these transmissions. Anyway,
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in on that. The smartphone will use either the Bluetooth or your near field communication chip and or a Zigbee chip.
What's the Zigbee chip? TMC. What's the Zigbee chip specifically? I forgot.
It's another low power communication, and you could find stuff where they run Zigbee pretty far. I mean, it can go far, but it's another way to communicate low speed, by today's standards, low speed data. Mm-hmm. And it's there in the background. Most devices have it, but we don't use it as a consumer. But it's there.
Well, what is there for us as consumers is Bluetooth. We've got Bluetooth comms
Wi-Fi,
established.
NFC, infrared links. I think are going to be. I think those are going to come up. They're putting out the laser, the V cell phased array laser systems for Face ID and for depth perception for augmented reality. Those could very easily be used for data communication links. They likely are in the background, but they don't share that in a consumer capacity. So it's hard to say unequivocally that they're actively using the infrared lasers that are built into mobile devices for communications. At this point, they're used for mapping an environment, providing spatial and depth awareness and perception in order to allow augmented reality type applications and very high resolution photography to take place, as well as let you in your phone.
Don't underestimate the power of cameras too, and they're all over the place, and they're so small, and they use so little electricity. Man, cameras everywhere. Anyway, that's a little bit off topic. But that's one more piece as an adjunct to further data collection. Anyway, let's see what else he talks about here. It's not a very long video. I'll back it up just a few seconds. There's a lot of information in just 3.5 minutes here, and hello to everybody out in the chat too as well.
Communications are happening within the networks and wearable systems in direct proximity of the human body. That means both wearables are located directly on or very near the human body. 3. Body-to-body communications appear between antennas placed on two or more separated human bodies. 4. Off-body communications are made between the devices placed on a human body and devices placed on a remote access point. Now I will tell you about some common everyday examples of and devices placed.
Remote access point, and TMC, you're an internet backbone guy. That would be this device right here, right? Remote access point.
Yeah, remote access point is something that's not necessarily local. And so what they're talking about is stuff that's either on or in your body.
Right.
And or connecting, multiple devices around your body. There's stuff that if we have time, I'll show you.
Or multiple
remote access is, just as you said, it's going to be a cell phone that's far away. It's going to be something not attached to you. Cell phone, wireless router, could be cell tower, could be anything.
Now, this device right here is the portal that will connect to, of course, the other thing we started to show off was artificial intelligence. This is either this or your cell phone is going to be the major portal to connect all of the data being read about you to the back system of artificial
common denominator. Does it have a radio link? Or does it have a communications link to the internet? The easiest way to conceptualize that at this point is, does it have a radio link? When we just digressed a little bit a second ago about using infrared for communications. They also use ultrasound for communications, where your speakers theoretically could be spitting out frequencies higher than what's audible, which would by definition make it ultrasound. Mm-hmm. And you can communicate using tones, the way that fax machines communicate, the way that dial-up kind of stuff used to communicate. Well, that technology is still viable. They use it in the ultrasound range, and your devices can talk to each other kind of like R2-D2 talks, right? R2-D2 in Star Wars, the beeps and boops and all that nonsense. That just happens above normal hearing range in the ultrasound range, and so it's imperceptible to us. It's outside of our hearing bandwidth. But for all intents and purposes, a remote access unit at this point, for easy conceptualization, is something with a wireless antenna that's connected to the internet, or that connects you to the internet.
Gotcha. I want to figure something out here.
If you want, I can. I've got a bunch of docs that I found while this was playing that I did research on body communication a long time ago, and I've got them archived here.
All right, I'm going to pull this share down. I am troubleshooting a little bit of crosstalk in the audio in the background. So why don't you do that while I make sure our audio is good, okay?
Very good. All right, so I want to show you a few documents that I had saved a long time ago. I'm going to go back in and research this again because I found some other things that intrigued me, but there's an actual IEEE standard for wireless body area networks, which you see here, wireless body area networks, and there's a standard for it. It's IEEE 802.15.6. You can look this up and it'll give you some generic information about wireless body area networks. And really the gist of it is this. The way that a home network works, your Wi-Fi router, your computer network, whatever, it works the same way in a wireless body area network. The reason the standard is different is because you're dealing with different pieces of hardware and potentially different pieces of software. And the reason why they standardize it is so that you have seamless integration when you move from a wireless body area network up to your LAN or your WAN or your WLAN, your local area network in your house or in your office, or your wireless local area network. They also have other networks in between. You have a near field network, you have a local network, you have a body area network. And the way to really illustrate this, I guess, is to look here. If Wikipedia still has good information on this, but yeah, they do. Okay, so when you look over here, computer network types by spatial scope, right? So you have nanoscale networks, which are stuff that's put into your body, nanotech, right? Or other nano networks. This stuff will be integrated into things like walls and windows and tables, where they put nanotech actually in the textile or construction material that then is able to communicate and interact with the environment using things like radio waves. And that's a technology that's, I guess you could equate that to something like a backscatter technology. So then you have near field communication and body area networks, right? Bands, personal area networks, near me networks, local area networks, which are home, storage, or wireless, right? So your WLAN is basic. You get an internet connection at your house. It's got a wireless router. Everything hooks up to the Wi-Fi router. You give it a password, and you set up all your devices. That's all it is, wireless LAN. That's something for like a home or an office. And you can have repeating routers, and it still be considered a wireless LAN. Then you go to a campus area network, something like that would be on a junior college or a college or a large corporate environment. Then you have backbones, which connect campus environments and or cities and towns together. Metropolitan area networks, that'd be something that, like, if you were a phone company or a cable company, it would, when you talk about a metropolitan area network, it'd be like the network for LA or the network for New York, that kind of a thing. Municipal wireless network, same general idea, large commercial grade networks that provide connectivity to the whole population in that area. Wide area network, same thing. Cloud network, Internet Area Network, IAN, for communications and networks that connect voice and data exponents within a cloud environment over IP. It's more of a virtual type network. Then you have the internet as a whole, and then you have the interplanetary network, and that's, ranging on the NASA, Blue Origin, SpaceX kind of network stuff, satellites and talking to Mars and the moon and all that. For the purpose of this discussion, we're talking about body area networks, which deal with near field communication devices, near field communication chips, NFC chips. All of your devices have it, used to, pay for things, tap to pay, or to exchange contact information by bumping phones. Or in the near upcoming future, it's going to be things like opening up doors for you and starting your car and unlocking your house. And all of that's going to use near field communication, Bluetooth style technology, and an ultra wideband technology. but that's going to all be considered, near field communication networks. So body area networks as it relates to communication. So we looked at the standard. There's IEEE standard, simple.
Yep.
And then we have different ways to do this. Beam-forming galvanic coupling signals for implant to relay communications. Beam-forming galvanic coupling. So they put something on your skin and it transmits energy.
Beam-forming too. You're going to hit on that a little bit too, right?
Yeah, it's at some point it's part of it's a core component of directed energy. Beamforming can be done in a wireless environment, and it can be done with electrodes or ultrasound transducers. Anything that can transmit energy, anything that emits energy. If you have many energy emitters, you can use them together in a phased array configuration and create a beam. And what that really means is that you're sending out energy and you're concentrating it in one direction versus another, and you can sweep it like a flashlight, and you're searching.
So you can target it, and how precisely can that be focused onto a subject or a portion of a subject?
It depends on the wavelength. It depends on the number of transmission elements, and it depends on the sophistication of the software.
Right.
There are other components that matter, right? The resonator, the frequency oscillators, and all of the subcomponents. But basic is what's the frequency, how many elements do you have, and what's the sophistication of the software.
Right. The higher the frequency, the more precise the focal point, and then additionally with the software engine also. Staying focused on a portion of a subject as the subject is moving, right?
Yes.
A moving target.
And that's pretty run-of-the-mill technology at this point. And the easiest way to visualize that is when you're watching a video or taking a phone call in a vehicle moving at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, and you don't have a disruption in service, the thing's tracking you. It's moving with you. So the further away you are, the less it takes to move the beam. The closer you are to the transmitter, the more aggressive the beam has to move to follow you. The further away you are, the less it has to move.
Right.
So in this picture right here talks about implants. So you could have nerve cuffs that are in the micron range, or you could have nanotech, which is in the nanoscale range. You can look at Charles Lieber patents on humaninternet.org to kind of get an idea of what that is. They can put many pieces of nanotech inside of a single cell. Inside of one cell, you can have double-digit numbers of metal doped type nanotech. And what this does is in this image here, for all intents and purposes, you can have something in the micron range or the nanoscale range or the millimeter range, depending upon what you have in your body. And they can put something on your skin. And as we move forward, I can show you where they're able to do this without actually putting something on your skin. And they can transmit energy into the body and energize and communicate with implants in your body.
Interesting.
So here's field pattern around the electrodes, right? These little circles here. So the way that the implants are made, what they're made of, what shape they are, all of it has everything to do with how they're going to emit energy. And this is kind of a little outside of the scope, but when you talk about nanotech, how that stuff is made, what it's made out of, what it's attached to, has everything to do with what its emission characteristics are going to be, or what its absorption characteristics are going to be. And that's especially true down in the quantum mechanics scale, which is really where that stuff lives, because it's such a small thing, nano right. size. It's really functioning with quantum mechanics more than it is with classical science or classical mechanics. So anyway, this talks about, muscle implants and whatnot, and using code division multiplexing, CDMA, common. If you look up cell phone transmission technology, CDMA is one of the common ones, and it's just a way to transmit information. And And the reason I is to, again, remind or reinforce this idea that the reason why these are standardized through the IEEE, this is an international organization, is so that things like body area networks, wireless networks, local area networks, metropolitan area networks, the internet is able to function. Like when the internet first came out, you had all these different communication protocols, and it was very difficult to have things talk, and it made things slow, it made things break, and it made it created a need to have multiple systems, redundant systems that do the same thing but talk in different languages. And so they started standardizing all of this stuff, and the IEEE is like the international figurehead for setting communication standards as well as electrical standards. It's what they do. It's an interesting group to look up, the IEEE. We were here, human body as an antenna and its effects on human body communications. Human body communication is a promising wireless technology that uses the human body as part of the communication channel. It operates in the near field of the high frequency band and in the lower frequencies of the very high frequency band. VHF. So when you think VHF, that's like television broadcast.
Yep.
Yeah, that's television broadcast.
Generally, that's 30 to 300 megacycles, if anybody was interested.
Very good.
The UHF band classically was defined as 300 to 3,000. And then, of course, the latest, all the cell phone stuff, all of the new Wi-Fi, that's well above that. That's up in the gigahertz.
Yeah, so this is AM, FM, and television back in the day.
Yep, it's right around the FM band. It's a little, what they're talking about is a little below the FM radio band, matter of fact.
Right, the lower side of it, right?
Yep.
And then it says here, yeah, it just took me to another link. It doesn't matter. So these were, when you think about this historically, how long have VHF broadcasts, how long have VHF transmissions been out there in our environment?
80 years, maybe 90 years.
As long as anyone listening has been alive.
Right.
And so here we are now today, right? This was back in 2014 when this paper was published. Human body as an antenna using those frequencies, right? And its effect on human body communications. And it says it's using it in the near field, right? So it's one wavelength, roughly between 1 and 3 wavelengths away from the transmitter. So we could go through it and look up what a 30 megahertz wavelength is in terms of distance. 30.
Looking it up right now.
30 megahertz wavelengths. And here's a wavelength calculator, if it'll load.
Yep, that's what I just got to.
So 30 megahertz. Calculate, man. Give me the number. So yeah, it's up here at the top. I missed it. So it's 9.9
10 meters. 9.9 meters. Yep.
10 meters. So 30 feet.
Yep.
It's the near field. That's the near field distance, basically.
Yeah, which is
not that far.
It's pretty good if you're talking about applying this in a residential area or in an office environment. Close range. You could be anywhere in a building and be within that 30 feet. Probably.
30 feet would be anything inside of a large front room. And so you think really no big deal, whatever, right? Well, here's, if you use higher frequencies and you just take the classic example of wave interference, or that physical principle of wave interference, you can create 30 megahertz.
Exactly. You create a 30 megahertz field using higher frequencies.
That's right. Using wave interference. So you would just be 30 megahertz off on 2 different broadcasts coming out of your Wi-Fi router, and they would combine at a location and generate a 30 megahertz field. And if you were to do that off of a reflector, something like a wall or some reflective surface, when I say reflective, I'm talking electromagnetic radiation reflective, you can then create a new near field. And it's more specifically, if you can get something to resonate, and this is a notion of this idea of what they call concentrating electromagnetic energy at distant objects. And there's an actual patent for that, I think, from Boeing.
And if you weren't restricted to stay at 30 megahertz, and if one of the transmitters was to slowly sweep its frequency, then you could keep the subject in the field and in focus as they moved. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's where the beamforming piece comes in. Where
beamforming, that would change the focal point, the focal distance, so that they would be able to track the subject as they got closer or further from either or both of the transmitters.
Yeah, but considering it has a near field of 30 meters, or excuse me, 30 feet, 10 meters.
30, yep.
Mm-hmm. If they were able to find anything, this is just hypothetical, right? If anything in your front room could function as a reflector or a resonator for electromagnetic energy, even if it's an antenna,
they could extend it. They could extend the range.
A tunable antenna. Let's say you've got a Wi-Fi router and a television, for example, or your phone or a smartwatch or laptop.
Smart refrigerator, smart washing machine, whatever.
Anything connected, right? It has an antenna. Right. They theoretically could resonate that antenna or some electronic component, some component in one of those devices, use it as a resonator and generate a 30 megahertz field that then has a near field of 10 meters, of 30 feet. So you are then inside of a 30 megahertz electromagnetic field.
Right.
And I know that's more on that would require, to really break that down, it requires visual presentation and more time. But nonetheless, the whole point of all that is that we've been immersed in this stuff for as long as we've been alive. And the question really is, how advanced is this technology? And they're giving it to people to write about and talk about and learn about in colleges, and this was published in 2014. So
we've been immersed in it, but it hasn't been as intelligently controlled as it is now able to be. So yeah. We've been bathed in radio waves from TV stations, the old TVs, for decades. But now, by superimposing upon that better control of all those frequencies, now there's all of the focusing capabilities come in, and concentrating the energy at a point, and then getting readings back from whatever it is that it's bouncing off of, which is kind of what we've been talking about a lot in various applications thereof for the last few episodes.
It says here that the results of this paper, right, the experiments they did, and they wrote about it. That's what this paper is. It says the maximum human body communication gain near 50 megahertz is due to whole body resonance. So at 50 megahertz, they have a large spike in body resonance with that electromagnetic frequency, right? And the maximum at 80 megahertz is due to the resonance of the arm. Similarly, the results also suggest that the magnitude of the induced axial current in the body due to electromagnetic field exposure of the human body is higher near 50 megahertz. So they can put you in a vertically polarized plane wave, right, at near 50 megahertz, and get your whole body to resonate. Doesn't that sound like fun? Or at 80 megahertz and get your arm to resonate. And all of this, once this is ongoing, right, then they can communicate human body as an antenna and its effects on human body communications.
That's
they
absolutely
can begin to
amazing.
Send communications and send power, literally send power through your body. And if you don't believe me, I'll show you right now. Here is a patent for the transmission of power and information through the body from MIT. And it uses what they call capacitive coupling to transmit data and power through a user's body from MIT. This is back in 1997. The signal the transmitter applies to the user's body not only contains a data component, but also powers the receiver somewhere else on your body.
That's what I was thinking. It's going to power a device, an onboard device,
an implant or another wearable. So you could have something on your waist or your wrist, and then something on your head or on your foot, and you have a network of stuff on your body.
You know, it's really just an intra-body version of something that people have all the time. I don't know if anybody has used a card access system, but you've got a proximity card, and the proximity card has electronics on it. And when you get near the door that you're trying to go into, you wave that card in front of the thing, the transceiver, and it sends out electromagnetic radiation that powers up the electronics in your access card. And once the electronics are powered up, the access card sends your unique ID code back to the receiver. It's really just taking that and making it smaller and making it so that it's subcutaneous or intrabody, and encapsulating it in such a way that it can just live in your body for forever. And they can be made extremely small. I mean, really small now.
Check this out. It says this disclosed approach is amenable to a wide variety of applications ranging from interbody exchange of digital information between individuals through physical contact, like a handshake. You know how useful that would be to walk up to somebody and shake their hand and exchange money or exchange corporate information that shouldn't necessarily go over email networks or phone networks.
Right.
And have it all be, done on blockchain and stay local on some type of a device that would then allows you to take that information. Anyway, I'm just me thinking like an evil villain, and then you also have intra-body data transfer between a paging device worn in the shoe, you could say, or something in the body, and a wristwatch display device, maybe like a smartwatch.
Okay, so how does that work?
Permit communication between the user and or her immediate environment. Yeah, it gets crazier. Transferring data through the human body. We'll highlight a couple of these and we'll go back to.
Well, the most amazing part about this as we talk about it is this is not science fiction. This is actual stuff that's built, that works.
Yeah. This is an AT&T patent. Talks about transferring data to a device, includes identifying the data, blah, 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 modulating it with a signal. AT&T is really big on using ultrasound to move information through the body. Yeah, see electroacoustic or electromechanical. Anyway, just another example of using the body for, basically as an internet device. They have,
at least in this iteration of the application of this technology, it requires that there be some artificial devices or implants put into the body. In other discussions, we'll talk about how there are actually ways in which our genetic molecules can actually be addressed to cause them to do things. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about devices, albeit very, very tiny devices, which can be integrated into a body. And how would they get those into us? Well, I don't know, but some of them are very, very small. Again.
Yeah. Here's another MIT patent where they're using the electrical properties of your body to communicate. Sensing and signaling by externally induced intrabody currents. So then the question becomes...
Look at that diagram.
Yeah.
Wow, that's blowing my socks off.
Yeah. And so what they talk about, I think it's in this patent, the communications distance of like a near field communicator.
This is a really good diagram.
Yeah, if you were just to use a near field communication type device, you have to get very close to the thing, like tap to pay or to tap somebody's phone to exchange information.
Right.
When you put it through the body, you get like a 6-foot extension with the same technology.
Yep.
So yeah, so your body actually acts as an amplifier, if you will, or a way to project that electric field to transmit information. So rather than having to come within, 3 inches or 2 inches of another device to then create a resonance and then transfer information, if it's done through your body, it's out like 6 feet away.
You know what somebody in the chat just wrote? He said an experiment that he's tried is to take your car unlocker, your key fob, and hold it in a different way. And he's talking specifically, put it under your chin and then push the button. And what it does is it uses part of your body as an antenna extender.
That's right.
And he's saying that it uses the water content of your head as part of the extended antenna of the key fob, and it gives longer range. You know something? I'm going to try that. I am going to try that. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, if your battery's dying, I think what he's saying is like, if your battery's dying and you need to lock your car and you're far away, if it's not working, then yeah, what he's saying is attach it or put it somewhere on your body and it'll amplify the signal.
Yep. It's a little bit haphazard, and if you experimented and held that fob closer to different parts of the body, you'd reach a point at which you hit the sweet spot where you're using your body as the most efficient antenna extender for the key fob. Mm-hmm. That is fascinating. I never thought of that. Thanks for that comment.
So here's some commercial applications of this near field or body area technology. And it's just a PowerPoint that I found, and it's how does bodycom technology work? Activated by capacitively coupling to the human body, system communicates bidirectionally between a centralized controller, one or more wireless mobile units. And at this case, it's using 125 kilohertz. And literally it's using the body to transmit the information. Typical applications, right? A lot of this stuff is real familiar. Keyless entry, security systems, home industrial, door locks, pet doors.
And by the way, working on this stuff is nothing new to some of these companies. That company, Microchip, I've been repairing electronics for years, and Microchip they're an integrated circuit manufacturer for 30 years or longer. Long time. Maybe a little newer than somebody like Motorola, but I mean, these companies are, they are driven and directed by whoever it is that wants to buy their devices to make them better and smaller and give them added onboard functionality in their little ICs that they make, and make them smaller and more efficient.
Google actually has a patent that talks about the antennas in your phone that are used for proximity sensing doing exactly this, capacitively coupling to you, and you become the ground source.
Yep. So look at this. We have a PIC chip is a programmable interrupt controller. Basically, it's a programmable, very small microprocessor that will be programmed to send out a specific train of bits. And so that goes through an amplifier. It's modulated up to 125 kilohertz, and then by capacitive coupling connects to the body, in and out. And it gets return signals back, and those are picked up once again by the capacitive coupling, and they go through a demodulator, and then the chip, the programmable interrupt controller, interprets what it gets back. That's old. And the same block diagram is still in effect now, but they've enhanced it. It's more now, but that's the really good general idea of what they do. Now just multiply that by about 10 times the amount of power and 1/10 the size.
And increase complexity, where you actually are able to manage multiple. It's not a home run connection. It's not a one-to-one connection. It becomes a network, basically. Yes. Not just you being part, like a power line, one wire. You actually become a full network.
Yep.
the complexity.
Yeah. This is for people to understand it. This is a good simple diagram. Now, just in your mind's eye, in your imagination, just build on this, and then inside that PIC microcontroller, now build on that a whole lot more software. Now build on that. That's a whole lot more instructions so that it's more intelligent. Now build on that a transceiver that connects it to whatever the local node of the internet is to link you to some other, larger system of computers where artificial intelligence will be residing somewhere in there.
Yeah. So here's an interesting document, a review of capacitive coupling in the human body communications based on digital transmissions. We're not going to read this, but it gives you another visualization. You have a transmitter and you have a gap here. There's a gap here.
Yep. Capacitive gap.
Mm-hmm. And then you have a receiver where electricity is literally leaving your body or flowing through you basically, and it's been modulated through your body.
And what's in the middle? Your brain, your heart, your organs. So those signals are going through your body, and then it's going to look and interpret what the changes to what was transmitted into your right arm were versus what comes out your left arm.
Right. So they can use this general diagram and think about how medical diagnostics could work with something like this, where they can transmit and receive energy through your body and then measure the changes. Because in order for this information to go from point A to point B and not be corrupted or lost, they have to compensate for whatever noise is introduced into the data signal while it's passing through your body. They have to compensate for that. So rather than just take it away or adjust for it,
they use correction electrodes. That's what the ground electrodes are at the bottom. Those help reject noise.
Imagine taking the same system though and looking at the noise and extracting useful information, finding useful information from what would be considered noise. And you think noise, right? Because when you think noise, you think it's unwanted information. It's unwanted distortion.
Let's look at this diagram. Let's say that what they wanted to get was signal from just your brain, right? So we transmit into the whole body, but we have one path that's at the bottom. It's the one going through the legs. And what that does is it gets a reading of all of the other electromuscular signals that are coming through because you're moving your body. And it says, okay, I got those signals. Now I'm going to strip those all out of what I'm reading, so that all I'm left with after I remove all of the electromagnetics from the skeletal muscles is just what went through the brain, which is their top loop up there. So, and they could do vice versa too. If they wanted to eliminate your EEG and they just wanted to read your skeletal muscles, they could reject what they're getting off of the loop going through the cranium and just read the body musculature.
Yeah, that's a very, very generic description, but simply put, yes, that can be done.
What's this one? Ooh, we got an optical cable now.
Yeah, it's transmitting signal, receive signal, optical cable. It looks like it's just a reference signal. So for the paper, for them to I guess go through the experiment, they have a reference signal that's basically split. Yeah, it's got a signal divider here. So they split the signal, so it's an identical signal, just cut in half. And they send one through an optical cable, and then as a reference, and then they send one through the body.
Right. Now I get it.
And then from this, you can measure the accuracy, you can measure the throughput, the speed, the noise.
The noise.
You can also refine the technology too. How close can you get it?
Well, you might be able to pick up some different data by the optical pathway versus the EM pathway and use the two together to learn a third piece of data that you wouldn't get from either one of them by itself. So that's not necessarily for noise rejection. That's for picking up more information, like you said.
Yeah, and that extra information that you'd be able to glean or extract out of there would be what's going on in the body.
Right.
Yeah.
This is built on some old technology. Long ago, in a previous lifetime, I used to repair EKG equipment. You know, they measure your heartbeat and your heart waveform. And there was a noise rejection electrode. You'd strap an electrode onto the person's left leg, and it would read all of the other noise coming from all the other muscles in the body and throw it away, so that all that was left was just the EKG. It's
clean,
modern
clean
application of some old techniques.
So this one here, wireless mobile communication using the human body as a channel. And it talks about using, mobile communication takes place in a wired network, infrared and Bluetooth, which consumes a lot of battery power. It says the main objective of this research in mobile communication is to use the human body as a transmission channel for electric signals. So
much more efficient, because the further that you can get your transceiver into the human body, then the less power it's going to take, and the less noise that you're going to encounter in the process of connecting to it, right? Yeah. I mean, it stands to reason. If I'm trying to read your brain waves from 3 feet away, well, I need a lot of power and I need a really sensitive antenna, and there's going to be a lot of noise. Now, if I put a headgear on you and I can read it at just 1 centimeter away, there's less noise. But now let's think, what if I can build that into you and I've got it inside, right close to where the signals are, and it's powered by a very low amount of power just from the background electromagnetics that are around. It doesn't need much power, and there's electromagnetics energy all around us, so it's powered. It's getting close to the signal source. There's very low noise, and it can get more precise readings. And it's built right into your head or your neck or your arm or wherever. And it's tiny. Doesn't even hurt. It doesn't itch. You don't even worry about it being there. Nice
secure intra-body wireless communication systems from NASA. Technical report.
NASA.
Mm-hmm. Designed to make use of the emerging and yet to emerge technologies, including ultra-wideband for wireless communications, smart implantable sensors, ultra-low power networking protocols, security and privacy for bandwidth and power-deficient devices, and quantum computing.
Ooh, boy.
Progress in each of these fronts is hindered by the needs of breakthrough. But as we will see in this paper, these major challenges are being met or will be met in the near future. Secure intra-body wireless communication systems is a network of in situ, in the environment, wherever you are, wireless devices that are implanted to coordinate sensed data inside the body, such as symptoms monitoring collected internally or biometric data collected of an outside object from within the intra-body network. Whoa.
I think they meant collected by an outside object from within the intra-body network. I'm not sure. Collected of an outside body.
Biometric data collected of an outside object from within the intra-body network. I don't know. If you were to, if you could have technology put into somebody and then that person was able to get close to somebody else and then whatever's in their body was able to sense the biometrics of somebody else, that would be very useful.
That's not a typo. Yeah, that is exactly what they meant to say.
That would be, I mean, you wouldn't need to go after a head of state. You would just need to find their aide when they weren't on duty at the local pub. Get them all wired up and put them back next to the head of state. And you've got a biologic bug right next to your head of state with a staffer.
So what we're talking about here, generally, we're focusing on the actual hardware and software that is right there up close and personal to the body. So that's all this stuff. And this is all part of what helps to fuel the engine of having that artificial intelligence interface between people, bodies, groups, etc. But this is how it's done. These devices, this hardware, let's see, neuroprosthetic device such as cochlear and retinal implants. Wow. Read that one.
Yeah, so this is
wow.
This was 2011, 10 years ago. An overview of the recent wideband transcutaneous wireless communication techniques. GT Bionics Lab, Georgia Institute of Technology, major government research school. Neuroprosthetic devices such as cochlear and retinal implants need to deliver a large volume of data from external sensors into the body. While invasive brain-computer interfaces need to deliver sizable amounts of data from the central nervous system to target devices outside the body. Nonetheless, the skin should remain intact. This paper reviews some of the latest techniques to establish wideband wireless communications links across the skin. I want to read this again. I haven't looked at this paper. It's got to be a year. And it's from Georgia Tech, so I mean they're going to get in. It's way detailed. Carrier base versus pulse base. So this carrier wave versus a pulse, and there are benefits to both. But I mean,
they're generally so far talking about something that's outside, but just outside the body. Transcutaneous. It's across the skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wideband transcutaneous links.
Sorry, I didn't know you were reading.
Whoa. Decoupling data. I'm getting vertigo here. Decoupling data from power and leaving its source outside the body with careful design of coils, antennas, and geometries are the solutions offered here to address some of these challenges. Okay, so they're focusing in on the specific, a very precise design of the coils and the antennas to get that optimal transcutaneous communication.
And these are what's in your phone, folks. Coils and antennas.
Right.
These are in everything. Everything has coils and antennas, carefully designed coils and antennas. So that's all I could find in the 3 minutes that video was playing.
It's all right.
I don't know where else you want to go.
We got a little bit more. Just on the general topic, I got another guy here. We have a minute or two of that other one that we could finish up with, which was this. Put this back up here. And this is very short, but and he speaks quickly, so you really got to pay attention as he goes through. There's like a minute left here. So yeah, this we've been talking about. We've shown you some of the actual devices. So here he goes. He's talking about the overview, why, what to do with it. Here he goes. Let's see if it works.
Based on a remote access point. Now I will tell you about some common everyday examples of wireless body area.
Now think of all these people having these local intra-body hubs, and that these people and the hub inside each one of these people is able to send and receive information from a proximal person within some distance, not real far, but within arm's reach or within a room, something like that, connecting so that those things are exchanging data about each person. We don't know what that data might be, but he goes on.
Network communication we can see around us. Due to advancements in microelectromechanical systems and wireless communication technology, wireless body area network is heading toward a great technical boom. Nowadays, it is becoming more and more common to see people using wearables like smartwatches, fitness bands, and wireless earphones that are connected to smart.
And of course, from previous episodes, you know that we've discussed the very, very fine, thin film layer of conductive material on the inner side of your Apple Watch, for example, that will allow a kind of a transcutaneous galvanic coupling to the body, capacitive, as well as electromagnetic.
It's a capacitive. The electrodes that are on the earphones are capacitive electrodes. They don't make metallic or necessarily conductive contact. The contact that's made is with generated electric fields between the electrodes. So you have many electrodes that are painted, basically vapor deposited, so molecular or atomically thin layers of conductive material that don't necessarily make physical contact with your skin. It might have a sheen over top of it, a protective layer over top of it, but it generates an electric field by making a connection with an adjacent electrode.
Yeah, and it's actually so much better to do it that way, because if they were to try to calibrate something that was making galvanic coupling or skin conductivity, then if you sweated, then it would throw the calibration of the thing off drastically, and it would have to stop and recalibrate. If it's capacitive,
smartwatch has those.
What's that?
A smartwatch has those, but
well, it does have those to actually monitor, how much, what your galvanic skin response is, but that's not this. That's a different, slightly different technology. Almost looks the same, but it's actually totally different.
Well, there's
the capacitive.
Yeah, here's your AirPods, and here's the electrodes that I'm talking about.
Painted all over it.
Mm-hmm. They're deposited on there, and here's earbud device with capacitive. They call them sensors, capacitive sensors. But here's an EEG monitor with capacitive electrodes. Same thing, and a method of monitoring brain waves. There's an actual patent for that. And the electric fields I'm referring to, look, Apple Beats by Dre.
Yep.
And inside the Beats Tour, you have these are electric fields. These are conductive traces that are built inside of the earphone, the earbud, and they literally generate electric fields.
Think of something almost like radio waves radiating out from each one of these things, and they're in coordination with each other so that they have overtones and harmonics that make them focus at a place under your skin or inside your head.
So here's the sports model, right? For those that want to shoot hoops or run or whatever, right? Here's the wireless version or Bluetooth version of Beats that are the sports version. But look, inside the earpiece here, they talk about the wire there that you can bend to form fit. Those are electrodes. They also emit electric fields that go around the back of your ear. And you have nerves, and especially the vagus nerve and the auricular nerve and the trigeminal nerve are all along the side of your face and your ear. Yep. And these things interact with those. I'm going to say potentially, but I can show you patents that talk about touching the same places on the ears to treat neurologic disorders, urinary incontinence, arthritis. I mean, anything. Here's the studio version for those of you that want to look badass, super hip. Yeah. Well, inside.
What's in the head? Is there anything in the headband over the top? I wonder.
Yeah, these are the studio version Beats by Dre. Inside the cushion and inside behind the screen here, all of these things are conductive. They generate and emit electric fields. All of these are electrodes. Notice the number 40 and the number 40. And so here's the inside of the headphone. Here's the outside of the headphone. And there are conductive materials that are classified in the patents for this device as electrodes. Other pictures of electrode configurations. Electrodes.
Yep, as was set out in the chat, the proper term for that would be establishing a dielectric field. And I guess just taking a step back, does anybody realize, you go to Best Buy and buy a set of these things. Do you realize that when you buy something for the purpose of you consuming music media or whatever it might be, that what else there is in this thing that can send out electromagnetics much more than just the sound that you might be hearing? And so what's the next step? The next step is to access your auditory cortex directly, or even your visual cortex or other parts of your brain directly by way of the electromagnetics from this capacitive coupling. And it's almost a moot point that you're hearing sound that's vibrating your eardrum. There's so much more technology that you have put on your head when you put this on.
A couple ways to look at that. You can look at it as nerve stimulation for the nerves that are adjacent to the ear, around the ear, trigeminal nerve, vagus nerve, auricular nerve.
Yep.
And so that's you can look up bioelectronics. It's a new field that the pharmaceutical companies are getting into. They're partnering with big tech. It's electroceuticals, or bioelectronics, any of those terms, you'll be able to start finding things about it. And what it is this idea of tapping into your nervous system to correct the bioelectronic irregularities in order to treat disease. So instead of using chemicals, pharmaceutical-based medicine, they're moving into electrically based medicine because we are electrochemical by nature. So you got the nerve stimulation piece. You have the electric field piece that is generating the electric fields to ultimately interact with your nerves, or potentially generating electric field that's actually going directly to your brain. In addition to that, most of these devices are wireless, so they also possess antennas. And the antennas that they possess are typically configured to generate 2.4 or 5 gigahertz or 60 gigahertz. The new wireless technology is 60 gigahertz. So the newer components that are coming out are going to either be Wi-Fi based, Bluetooth based, or both. If they're Bluetooth based, they're typically at 2.4. And when you start looking at the electromagnetic characteristics of an antenna that's plugged into your ear, and it's generating a 2.4 gigahertz signal, 2.4 gigahertz signal is approximately 12 and a half centimeters. Well, that's all it takes to get to the center of your brain.
That's
with
right.
a near field electromagnetic signal.
Yep.
You can have electromagnetic signal in the near field generating 2.4 gigahertz. And with two of them in, you now have the ability to generate wave interference, potentially with beamforming, depending upon how many antennas are in.
Absolutely. Beamforming would be easy. That's just a matter of having sophisticated enough software instructions.
Yeah.
To steer those antennas.
Yeah. So you have that, and then you also have the ability to have the Wi-Fi network or the cell, whatever's coming out of the cell phone, also interact and point to the brain. So what I'm really trying to illustrate here is that there's the potential to have 1, 2, 3, or more antennas that are intelligently connected, generating or broadcasting electromagnetic fields that can interact with your body. And since we're talking about headphones, the most obvious piece is your brain. And they can do it in the near field. They can do it in the far field.
Two things from out in the chat, just to briefly interrupt. Out in the chat, tell us a little bit, type into the chat a little bit more about the whatever type of appliance that you've used for conductive nerve energy to fight pain. And then the other comment was, it's actually, I think TMC meant to say an electromagnetic field versus an electric field.
Well, there's both. There's two different things here. So you've got things that have conductive traces like this that generate electric fields. And the electric fields that I was showing you earlier, right? Electric fields. It literally says in the patent electric fields. So they can generate
electrode to skin coupling.
Mm-hmm. This is capacitive coupling to the body, whether it be to the skin or to nerves.
I misspoke. You were right. Yep.
So you have electromagnetic fields that are both electric fields and magnetic fields that are related to the antennas. And based on what context you want to have the discussion, you can either interact with the body with the magnetic piece or the electric piece. Ideally, it's easier to interact with the magnetic piece because there is an associated electric field generation, and magnetic fields pass very easily through the body. So you can modulate a magnetic field through the body, and as it interacts with tissue, particularly conductive tissue, things that have ions in them, sodium, chloride, potassium, and others, they generate their own electricity because you have a direct association between an electric field and a magnetic field. One assists the other. One generates the other. When
and
going through something conductive.
There is someone out in the chat that's really well versed in the differences and the correspondence between those two. Yeah. Yep.
So I stole share from you, but I wanted to, since you brought it up, I really wanted to share with you this piece, and it's on Human Internet. If you want to go look at these patents yourself, it's here. I wanted to share this piece because it has everything to do with what a body area network is and the types of things that can be used to generate electricity or generate energy, I should say, and use the body to communicate with other things in the body or on the body,
Right.
Whether they be wearable or implanted. And things like headphones and watches can do that. And
think of the coming world when it becomes the standard in production and manufacture of all of these wearable things, something as innocuous as earbuds, that they are all equipped with these types of capacitive coupling and electrodes, etc. Then it's really then just a matter of, when we get into the field of electroceuticals, it's really just a matter of, hey, if you're a little stressed out, you can throw your bottle of Xanax pills away. Just make sure that you got your earbuds on, because we're going to be able to electroceutically calm your brain waves down. Excuse me, there goes my voice again. We're going to be able to electroceutically take the place of what you had to do with some sort of psychotropic drug in the past. Not going to be necessary. So it could be good, but once again, it's like when you have your bottle of medication in your hand, you think about it and you choose, well, am I going to take this or not take this? When you put your earbuds on or your headset or your Apple Watch, it's not as apparent, it's not as transparent to you what might be happening in and out of your nervous system or your brain. But just think, the potential. It's big. Could be good.
Yeah. So these are the sleek, cute, and sexy energy emitting devices that we purchase for consumer convenience that have the hardware components to potentially allow a great deal of connectivity beyond what we are able to use.
Right.
So we get the consumer piece, but what you're buying, you're only really getting 10% or so of what's possible with something like this. There's patents for devices that fit inside of something like a watch to do things like clean your blood, where it emits electromagnetic energy into your wrist, where you have high blood flow in the arteries, and it's able to clean your blood with pulsed electromagnetic fields. And it's something that an Apple Watch can do. It has the same physical components necessary to do it. It just requires the software to run it. It would be considered a medical device and be a whole other thing. Now, the question is, are they doing things like that or not? Are they doing it without your consent or not? Are they offering it to the elite and not us? I mean, what's really going on? I don't know. I'm just sharing.
It could be very good on one hand. If you think of the access point of your wrist, sooner or later, all the blood in your body, all the blood cells in your body probably have wound up flowing through your wrist. All right. It all circulates all through your whole body. So if you're cleansing, if there's some sort of a cleansing program that's run that is targeting specifically some sort of nasty little foreign invader type cell that's floating through the blood that's going by your wrist, that could really be good. Now, if the software goes wrong, or if the device, gets hacked, or it's corrupted somehow, then it might start targeting cells that are flowing through your blood, through your wrist, that you need. So, there's always the potential for something to go wrong. But if it works right, and if it works as we dreamed that it could, then there's your nice wrist-worn blood cleanser with very sophisticated software to target the nasty little microbes or whatever else might be floating through the blood.
Yep.
Nifty. So this is kind of a deep focus in on some of the devices. Again, the bigger picture that we started off on the show with is I don't know. I think we've gone in and we're going to stay in a little bit. We were talking about the grand picture of connecting by way of devices like these, both on body and intra-body, to artificial intelligence on the outside for various purposes, but you've got to see the piece where the device is able to connect with our brains to help to.
It's easy to say that artificial intelligence is going to, I'm saying this flamboyantly, run the world, take over the world, but mechanically, the nuts and bolts of that, what does that look like?
Stuff like this is how it's done. Right.
Step by step. It's all that can be done without, you can't just make broad sweeping statements like AI is going to take over the world. And
everybody's just going to say
about that.
Everyone's
got to be able to really try to isolate how or what are some of the potential ways this could be done. And I think that's really the underlying premise.
Right. So it kind of looks like that little diagram over on the left-hand pane of your screen right now.
Yeah. Something else, since you talked about Nano real quick, I'll show you this on Human Internet. There's a nanotechnology section that talks about brain stimulation with nanoparticles, nanoparticle delivery techniques, magnetic nanoparticles, synthetic or biotechnology. I think this section's blank. Cyborg cells and quantum dots. And if these terms are starting to make their way up to the general consciousness here. Nanotech, nanoparticles, quantum dots. But if you go to cyborg cells, for example, it's where you're going to find stuff on Charles Lieber. And here is cyborg cell, literally that's where I got the name, out of an Air Force Research Laboratory paper that was finalized and published in 2018 that Charles Lieber worked on, Harvard College professor, president, and fellows of molecular nanoscale circuits for active control of cells.
Active control.
And it says here, the goal of this work is to develop molecular nanoscale circuits that control cells via external radiation. That's Wi-Fi. That's cell phones. That's satellites. That's radio and television. That's infrared. External radiation being electromagnetics and anything in the electromagnetic field. Light is in the electromagnetic spectrum. Is what I meant to say. Light is in the electromagnetic spectrum. Radio waves, electromagnetic spectrum. Millimeter waves, electromagnetic spectrum. Gamma rays.
And how do they do it? They do it by constructing nanowire probes. Nanowire probes are small enough to be intracellular.
Yes.
They could easily be extracellular. They could be lodged next to a ganglion of brain neurons, but they could also be within the neurons easily within them.
Yep. So they talk here about inserting into single cells followed by stimulation to elicit cell signaling. Finally achieving a scalable modular nano device platform capable of recording high amplitude, intracellular, so inside the cell communication, electrical signals in electrogenic cells. Electrogenic cells are things like neurons, things like heart cells. You have electrogenic cells in just about every organ. The intestines also come to mind.
And what do we mean by those words? Scalable means we can mass produce this. Modular means that these are just a standard nanowire probe. And within that platform is, of course, going to be the instruction set or the software that is transmitted through the nanowire probe. And so there you go. We make a lot of them, they're all pretty well the same, and they're software driven. So same device with different instructions is going to have different functionality in any given cell.
Yeah, the software, I think, would just be basic, like on-off keying, where it would resonate, not resonate, resonate, not resonate. And then you basically have some type of a timing and resonance characteristic that would then you'd be able to translate that into information. And I'm talking about like extracting information out. If you wanted to modulate a cell, it's literally just getting the right resonance frequency and the right timing, the right application of the resonance to excite the cell to the point that it's going to actually fire. Nanobioelectronics, this is an insane patent to read. It literally talks about networking cells and creating cyborg cells and attaching them to a radio transmitter and getting them to talk in like up to 50 or more pieces of nanotech inside of a cell. All of this encompasses the body area network and how do you get the body to talk to the internet. I think, go ahead, Andy.
That kind of gets to my point, which is, okay, something nano-sized. It kind of depends on what part of the cell structures you affix that nanowire or a group of nanowires to. It could be the mitochondrion, which is the powerhouse of the cell, or it could be the nucleus, which is the complete library repository of everything about that cell and what what it is built to do. So it could be any of those things. And if they're talking about having as many as 50 of them inside of a cell, well, they must be really small to be able to have that many of them inside of cells. And if they're modular and if they're scalable and they've managed to get like a huge number of these somehow introduced into a body, a human body, or injected, hint, hint, into a human body so that they're there. They may not be active, but they're all packed, they're all ready to activate and operate. Then with many of them inside of each cell, there's a whole lot of control and a whole lot of alteration of what the cell might otherwise do once it is being controlled or modulated by these devices.
This patent, also from Harvard, Charles Lee was on it, nanoscale sensors, it literally talks about monitoring the reaction rate of specific chemical or biological reactions. Physiological conditions in the body, in vivo, may also produce a real-time or near real-time signal that may be used to control a drug delivery system. So these are patents obviously for medicine, but you look at them as platforms. Look at them as elite tools in their elite little toolkits when they tell their minions, go minions, and deliver a plague from you minions so we can solve the problem. We can solve the problem. Near real-time data is a system in which multiple nanoscale wires are individually addressed, for example, using a switching matrix. They can address each wire on any suitable basis. For example, they can readdress them. They can address them and readdress them once per second, once every 100 milliseconds, or once every 10 milliseconds, once every millisecond, microseconds. So these are reconfigured. What they're talking about is reconfigurable, addressably reconfigurable nanotech that they can put in your body to sense what's going on chemically, electrically, physiologically in real time in your body and talk back to a network.
Right.
Did I mention that this guy got rolled up by the FBI and DOJ, I think in 2019?
You mentioned it a long time ago. I think it deserves mentioning again. Yeah.
Yeah. Scaffolding. This is the one that has the radio transmitter in it. Scaffolding components, nanoelectronic components, right? Scaffolds comprising nanoelectronic components. Conductive pathways can form an electric circuit that is internally contained within a cell scaffold. Electrical circuit is in electrical communication with an external electrical system, such as a computer or a transmitter. For instance, a radio transmitter, a wireless transmitter, an internet connection, etc. Any suitable pathway, conductive pathway, may be used, for example, pathways comprising metals, semiconductors, conductive polymers, or the like. Nerve cells, the things that control just about everything in your body.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Tissue. What's that?
That's a big deal. Controlling, hijacking or controlling nerve cells, that's a really big deal.
Yeah. Within tissues may form axons or dendrites with the nanoscale wires. So they're fusing the synthetic nanotech into the axons and dendrites inside of your nerves in order to transmit or receive electronic signals from other nerve cells and from or other nanoscale wires.
It's extra wiring. Typically, in natural form, the axons and the dendrites are the wiring between nerve cells. This is forming more wiring, additional stuff, which can either intercept what would be the normal communication between a natural axon and dendrite, or could tap into it and forward it to another location.
Mm-hmm. It says here, this is the last piece, and I'll drop share. A cyborg tissue can be created whose biologic functioning depends not only on the cells or tissues, but on the electronic components, the nanotech, as well. For example, such that the distinction between the biological and the electronic nanotech systems become blurred.
Well, sure.
So when you think of a cyborg, you think of metal on the outside, you got a metal arm and all that dramified crap that they're selling with transhumanism and futuristic sci-fi movies. That's not how it works. It's on the inside. You ever heard that cliche? It's what's on the inside that counts. Well, it's true. The cyborging of tissues, the cyborging of biology is going to be done in the nanoscale such that the distinction between the biological signaling and the electronic systems become blurred. And then you throw AI software management. Once you have the physical architecture, once you have the physical layers built, courtesy of, in this case, the Air Force Research Lab and Harvard, you can then deploy the artificially intelligent systems on top of it to steer and govern those hybrid systems that are now coupled to your biology.
And the way that this is going to appear is not really going to be in our face, or the way it's going to evolve or become implemented is not the metal on the outside, robotic man, it's not like that. Think of it so much more at this microscopic and even submicroscopic scale, whereby these and I'll call them devices and components are somehow infused into living systems. And I'm thinking of us. I'm thinking of humans. And are you going to recognize a cyborg when you see one? They're not going to look any different. It's scary, isn't it? A being or a human who is half cyborg won't likely look any different from anybody else on the outside.
According to Elon Musk, we already are cyborgs.
Who knows?
Well, he actually said that on, I think, his first or second.
Did he really?
Yeah, it's his first or second podcast with Joe Rogan. He said that we're already cyborgs and that a phone is already an extension of our memory. And he's right. How many phone numbers do you remember? And you don't count, Indy, because you're up there before cell phones were out there. But for those of you that grew up with a cell phone or have had a cell phone for more than 10 or 15 years, do you really remember phone numbers anymore? The answer is no. How often did you do math? When I say math, I'm not talking punching a calculator. I'm talking about doing math. You use a calculator. How often do you write a letter? You don't. You send an email. You type it out. So that's the point, is that trying to define or classify what a cyborg is, it is some type of a merger or a symbiosis between biologic life and machines.
Exactly.
And we're just marching down that road. And as we march, it gets more and more sophisticated, which allows greater and greater sophistication. Integration is the word I'm looking for.
More and more subtle to us, more and more subtle and more microscopic and more ubiquitous. In other words, everywhere. We're talking about stuff that's so small that it can be airborne, it can be absorbed, absorbed transcutaneously through the skin, inhaled, swallowed in food, all the things that we've talked about before. But when we look at a situation in which we've developed a sufficient number of these nano devices on board in many of us, then it's really just a matter of how they can be addressed and controlled and accessed by some sort of a system, an extremely powerful management system that would be able to, specifically control different ones to do different things in us. So
you mean like
a cyborg is not going to look like a robot. at all.
You mean like this thing right here, routing policies for biological hosts from AT&T, patent in 2012 and revised in 2015, that talks about one person's brain controlling another person's body and vice versa, and that the granularity of network addressing may be finer, such as a hand, a finger, a toe, or even down to a single cell. So we just looked at nanotech that was able to readdress itself. You can readdress the nanotech to every microsecond into cells, multiple pieces of nanotech sensing information, transmitting information, multiple pieces into and out of cells. And here's a patent from AT&T that talks about routing policies like a computer network for your body down to a single cell. This patent really exists. I encourage you to read it. It talks about using IPv6 as an example right here. IPv6 exemplary embodiments provide the interface to addressable locations and subnet notations used to denote neurological regions and biological regions. In other words, may thus assign biological subnet addresses to existing addressing protocols. Subnet notations may be used by the interface application, like the Facebook app on your phone or the Twitter app on your phone.
Yep.
Or Google in the background on your phone, to ensure addressable routings to the proper logical destinations of neurological and biological communications. Here it is right here. Just as a communication device may have its own unique IP address, each neurological region within the brain or each biological region within the body may have its own unique internet protocol address. Yeah. In this way, signals and communications may be addressably routed to different destinations within the brain and the body. And just in case you don't believe me that this statement is not in the patent, I will show you it is, in fact, in the patent. As one person's intra-host networks are addressable, different people and animals may conduct intra-host communications. In more simple terms, one person's brain may control another person's body and vice versa. And to explain that a little more in detail, one person's neurological area network may communicate with a different person's neurological area network. You mean like brain-to-brain communication straight out of your brain into somebody else's, using your phone as an interface to connect to the internet, send it over to someone else's phone, and you can have subliminal conversations, synthetic telepathy? Yeah, that's what that's saying, folks.
That isn't largely the way it's going to go. You know that there's going to be the middleman, the broker involved.
Well, that goes back to your opening statements. What does that look like, and who are we going to trust to manage this? I'm telling you what, I don't trust AT&T at all.
Well, what it looks like is that they can make a credible argument for the benefit of this, because there are so many instances of communications that were incomplete or misunderstood, both between groups or individuals, that this is something that people will, if they even understand what it is and what it's doing, they'll view it as a facilitator. They'll view it as something that makes communicating with others easier and better and more efficient. Like they've sold everything else to us. They've sold us on, and arguably it's really good. They've sold us on email versus the Pony Express, because it facilitates better, faster communications. Same thing with this. It will facilitate, or it will purport itself to facilitate more clear and accurate transfer of ideas between people. But there will always be that middleman in the background that's the gatekeeper, that's deciding what's going to get transmitted and what's not, and will we translate it into something else before we forward it.
That's right. That's why everything in the cloud has risk. You don't really have direct communication anymore. It's going through a broker. It's going through an exchange, a data exchanger that provides the opportunity to do something with that data before it gets to the intended recipient. And that exists today, right now.
It's fine to have that. All right. It's like a merry-go-round. It's like a turnstile. Everybody's jumping on, throwing information. Well, in the middle of that thing is the hub that routes it to where it's supposed to go. It's really, very elegant architecture to have a traffic cop that, sends this to this one and that to that one and all that. It's fine. It's except the only problem with it is it's not really under our control, right?
It's curated according to Tim Apple, Tim Cook.
Perfect
his
word.
Platform. He has a curated platform.
Yep.
That's a fancy word for censored, for managed. It's not an open commons.
Managed. That's right.
It's not an open platform. It is a censored platform.
Yep.
And this stuff will be no different. This thing further talks about having one person's body communicate with another person's body, or one person's brain communicating with another person's body.
And that would be an easy way to sell it to people who were so inclined to become closer in some way. All right.
Well,
it's an easy sell.
This, to me, this already exists, and I'll show you an example. We've looked at this before, but I'll show you an example. If you don't think the nanotech is possible, here's a patent from a guy who worked for NASA, patents for NASA, is now working with the Silicon Valley, and he's developed this. And this is a watch. It's a body wave watch, body wave wristband that allows for multiple people to have brain-to-brain communication, a dual EEG electroencephalography, no contact monitor with a personal EEG monitor for concurrent, meaning simultaneous brain monitoring and communication. And what this looks like is this: a smartwatch and a smartwatch. They're connected to the internet. They can transmit thoughts from one person to another. In this patent, it talks about using transcranial magnetic stimulation with a coil to stimulate the occipital cortex, which excites the vision center. And you can use the electrodes to communicate. And it says in this patent to inject neural code.
And what's happening right there in your diagram, right up between, you've got the internet or Wi-Fi right there. That is where artificial intelligence will live, and it will be the gatekeeper. And it gets down to that other thing again. Actually, the topic of the show, which is, should artificial intelligence or computers or outboard gatekeepers be in a position to manage humans or human communications? Yes or no? Right?
I'll answer it this way. What is the single underlying core component of any healthy or successful relationship? It's one word.
Communication.
The most important thing in a relationship.
Communication.
Doesn't matter what type of relationship.
Authentic communication.
No.
It's a couple
trust.
of words, but yeah. Trust. Oh,
it's trust.
Okay. Sure.
If you don't have trust, doesn't matter what transpires in the relationship, there's always the element of doubt or misdirection, or
we can really take off on that, because now let's take a look with that diagram that you've got up there right now. Where would people begin to start to migrate their trust? They would migrate it to the system, to the management system. Well, I can always depend on the management system to be there with me. I don't know if that other person will be listening or awake or responsive, but I can always trust the system because it's always with me. So the trust in the attempt to build trust and build bridges of trust between other people is going to now have, it's going to have a shortcut right to the control system, the artificial intelligence. That's where people are going to start placing their trust. Can you believe it?
This is where the emotion piece comes into play from the last show and others I'm sure we're going to get at. The mastery of emotion, being able to understand and convey emotion effectively, has everything to do with being able to establish trust.
You see how this can change the way that people are with each other, the way that people view each other? You can look at somebody else that a decade or two ago, you might look at them and you see them, you sense them, you see the expression on their face, and you say, all right, well, I'm getting a reading on you. People are going to end up having been migrated to a different view of interpersonal relations, so that if they don't have that interface in there, they're looking at another person and they don't even see a person anymore. They're saying, I'm waiting to hear the traffic cop vet this communication before I even acknowledge it. I'm going to wait to hear it through my device. I'm not going to get the reading directly from the person face to face. That's not going to be as valid to me anymore. You see where it's going?
Yeah,
it's going to isolate. It is drastically going to isolate people and estrange them from their fellow man and woman.
It's a perfect word.
That's what's going to happen.
Yep.
You know, I'm not a doom and gloom person. You know, I love technology. And by the way, this episode is for entertainment purposes only. This is for fun. But, you know, I think that this is really, really a super bad invasion into human relations, the ultimate estrangement of one human being from another at all levels. That's what I think is coming. But that's for entertainment.
It's one possible outcome. I mean, this technology, when you could apply this technology to a military setting, and it's going to be fantastic. If you could have a squad of infantrymen,
super, yep.
Yeah, or spec ops, you know, a small group of operators have something like a wristwatch on that they normally wear anyway, and enable them to have full sensorial communications when needed. You'd be able to tell when somebody was like, when their spidey senses went off, and they wouldn't have to say anything. You would just have that feeling transmitted to everybody else, and they would go on guard.
That's fine. That makes for a superior fighting force, better coordinated, better organized. This stuff should not be for the widespread dissemination and deployment in society at wholesale, large-scale level.
Not without a meaningful debate concerning or surrounding an internet bill of rights. We communicate and interact with each other prior to this scamdemic. We were doing fine, and we've been progressively deleveraged into this world of artificial tolerance, whereby those that make the rules of tolerance are the most intolerant. But before that, before the 90s, if you will, when all this nonsense really started, we were doing just fine with the rule of law, so to speak, governing the way that people interacted. And I'm not saying it was free from problems. There's always problems with it, but we've been communicating and interacting and engaging with each other and with all five senses since humans have been here. So to think that this technology should be completely omitted from public society, from the public, I personally disagree with that. I think there's some very useful applications of this, provided you have some very, very basic protections. And it's real simple. Take the intent or the spirit of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and use that as a framework to begin to initiate discussions as it relates to how the internet is going to blend or merge with the human species. We cannot just say no and expect the rest of the world to stop. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. So what do? You can't just put your head in the sand and turn around and say no. You have to look at it for what it is and apply what you know works. And Americanism works.
You know what you're saying?
Constitution works.
You know what you're saying, TMC? You're saying is because it's not going to stop. And I agree, it's not going to stop. You're trying to make the best of it. You're trying to look at the bright side. And I'm, at least at this point in my view of things, I'm not seeing a bright side. I've
been there, dude. I was there years ago.
What's that?
I was at that place years ago where I would look at this stuff and I would be horrified, hours and hours a day, absolutely horrified, quite frankly, in tears. I'm not going to lie. I was,
TMC. What do you need this for? There are so many even undiscovered intuitive capacities of the human brain. The brain, the mind, the body itself is a transceiver to a field around it. There is such a thing as, I don't know, call it a sixth sense or call it, spiny senses or intuition or whatever it might be. We don't need these devices. This is putting something in there that people will become dependent on.
Yeah.
And it's easy, right?
Yep.
Just strap it on your wrist, or get it in jet, however you get it on board.
It'll be done. It'll be done in permanent ways.
So I couldn't hear you. Say again.
I think it's going to be done in permanent ways before or at the same time as they roll it out in the consumer world, like you wear a watch or your headphones now offer, EEG functionality. Your watch offers EEG functionality. Your headphones offer EEG functionality. When we start seeing that actually come out in mainstream, like they're selling it, it's pretty much a done deal that it's already been done forcibly. Yep. I think it already has, in my opinion, and just my entertainment opinion. I think it's already been done. I think the nanotech has already been generally deployed, and at this point, all they're trying to do is increase the resolution. What I mean by that is increase the fidelity, the channel capacity. That's all. I think it's already been done. That's just my opinion. But
I guess we could chalk my viewpoint up on maybe I'm in a pessimistic mood, but I don't think so. I am seeing that we have a whole lot of stuff that's being built that we just don't need. There is an application for this, and I can agree with out in the chat as well. In a military application, this is really, really a great tool.
This would be a great tool in a corporate environment too, or in any business environment.
Yep.
I mean, think about managing a hotel.
All right.
Okay, so you're a hotel manager, or you're some type of a team lead, team supervisor, to be able to, in a controlled way. What I mean by controlled is where it's regulated, where you're not going in and spying on them while they're having a memory about having intimacy with their spouse the night before, while they're cleaning a toilet. You know what I'm saying? Like they're just kind of checking out for a minute while they're doing something really nasty. You're not spying. You're not able to see that kind of stuff. It's filtered and regulated, but you can understand and engage and go, hey, knock, knock. What are you up to? How are you going? How are you doing? How long until you're done? What's your workload look like? Do you need help? And have all of these things function as if it's part of your own internal monologue, but you understand that you're on a network while you're at work with a small group of people that's designed to allow you to function infinitely more seamlessly and discreetly, where you don't have to have a blaring radio disrupt your guests, or you don't have to have people coming and going and having these verbal discussions while you're trying to provide an atmosphere of relaxation and comfort to your guests. And this is just a fun, fruity, cute and fluffy example of how this could be used in the real world in retail, right? Or in a consumer environment.
Okay, so can you come up with a scenario where people have an onboard physiological firewall, which will then
That's exactly what I'm saying. Is there has to be
access or deny access to whoever the manager is, or right?
Now we're talking about choice. And that's what we don't have, which is where the pessimism, and I share that sentiment, that's where that comes in, because we're talking about this stuff and we're looking at it from the perspective of, I don't have choice. I don't have a choice, which simply put is, I don't have liberty. That's really what we're talking about, is this omission or this restriction of being able to have access to and exercise liberty.
So I just had this analogy run through my mind. There need to be boundaries. There always need to be boundaries, okay? National borders, so far out at sea is international waters. Within a certain range is not. Town boundaries, you've got a door, the front door of your house. That's a boundary. That's a wall.
Yes.
All right. So we have these for a reason. It is a point at which you have control over whether access is granted. We do not have anything like that being proposed or developed for us at all right now.
No, we're handing over the governance of AI to big tech and philanthropists. They're the ones making the decision on the governance of AI and looking at sustainable development goals, which is part of the fourth industrial revolution and the Great Reset, those are the contingencies or the basis under which they're making these decisions. It has nothing to do with civil liberties. It has nothing to do with privacy. It has nothing to do with your liberty. That is the farthest thing from their mind as it relates to protecting. In fact, the objective or the agenda is to violate those things in order to be able to impose greater, more sensitive mechanisms and techniques of control.
That's right. That's right. And we've kind of already been handing it to them. You know, all of your internet browsing preferences are stored, transmitted, you know, logged by Google. We've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
Say you delete something out of your email, that's not deleted. It's just deleted out of your view. Nothing is gone. The memory is huge. So we've been handing that over willingly for a good 10, maybe 15, 20 years.
It's easy 20 at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's my pessimistic view. This is for entertainment purposes only. Did I happen to say that the points of view and purpose of this video is not to incite fear or any sort of dramatic personal upheaval of the mind in any way, or to harass, or to cast unnecessary aspersions on any technology or group of people, but rather just to share opinions and thoughts with other like-minded individuals curious about the subject. And I'm just really glad that everybody joined us tonight. We've got a ways to go.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I had something that was sent out in the chat to me. I'll take 1 minute and put it up because that person had the thoughtfulness to send it in the chat. Let me just see if I can get it up properly. And this is totally off topic. Be advised. It's on topic, but totally off topic. This is from years ago. Get this thing up. And I'm just going to put this up just as further food for thought, which is, I'm going to go right to page 4. Okay. And thank you. You know who you are for sending this to me. Okay. Okay. Radio frequency microwave radiation, biological effects, and safety standards, June 1988. Okay. We aren't even talking about the concept of living in an electromagnetic bath of artificially generated electromagnetic radiation might or might not have deleterious effects on living organisms. We didn't even talk about that. But that's something to keep in the back of your mind, too. If you didn't already have enough to think about, I mean, going back years and years, study of the increasing level of background radiation and not knowing exactly what that might do to otherwise kibosh and disorganize the normal functioning of organisms on this planet, such as us. Anyway, we didn't talk about that tonight, but we have, I think about 12.5 episodes ago, we did talk about that. And that's something else to keep in mind. Why do we need all this artificial stuff? We need to be we need to be good shepherds of all of it, if that's even the right word for it. Otherwise, we're going to be in serious trouble. All right. Are we done?
I think so.
I think we're done. All right. Well, all right. Take us out. Don't forget humaninternet.org. That's, you want to do some reading? You want to go further, dig into any of these topics a little bit more. They're there, courtesy of TMC. Very, very diligent and industrious researcher he is. All right.
It's just technology. So technology is like anything else. It's a tool, and we have to understand what we're working with before we can decide what to do with it. And if we don't catch up, it's going to be decided for us. It already is being decided for us. We're already behind the curve. So I view this this stuff or this genre of information is probably some of the most important out there. You can debate and argue over public policy, fill in the blank, but the bottom line is that a technocracy, technology, is rapidly and aggressively overtaking every single facet of our lives. And it's getting to the point now where it's going offensive. It's no longer simply just gathering and soaking data and making decisions at a high level. It's looking back. It's talking back. It's poking and prodding back. That's the point we're at now. So it's a very big deal.
We were gonna end just a minute ago, but you know what? We don't ignore people who are participating with us. And that last little thing that I put up there, one of the people out in chat latched right onto that, and he said when he used to work, when he actually did satellite communications, he had to put radiation warnings up in front of satellite dishes that were only 2 watts of power at 8 gigahertz. And so those, had to put warnings and signs and a rope to keep people from walking in front of the thing and irradiating themselves with only 2 watts of power. And anyway, and you know what? Another thing, getting into a little bit more of the research of Charles Carl Steinmetz would be a very interesting thing. He was one of those electrical engineers that was way ahead of his time in the era of Nikola Tesla. And last good word of advice from out in the chat, and we'll use this as our good night sayonara for the week, is don't pee on an electric fence. Good night, everybody.